So, my name is David Pilby, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Glenn Wallace, introducing today the concept of Success ID, the first of a series of podcasts, Glenn, I think, that we're creating around this subject. So, welcome.
Thank you very much. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah. So I wonder, just to get us going, to get us into the room, if you like, what's behind the idea then? The Success ID idea.
I mean, you and I have spent combined sort of 40 plus years working with people in organisations who, by all sorts of measures, would be considered a success. Lots of those are incredibly happy. Lots of those not, and you say, well, actually, who's to say what success is? Who's right to judge what success looks like? And it's trying to help people understand that you can design a successful life based on your own terms rather than lifting and shifting society's version of that, but also helping people then work a way towards exploring what that would look like, and also how they might get there, or at least start the process of making their life a success on their own terms. And I think that's really exciting because it liberates people, and it liberates some energy, and I think it will give people a really good insight. And I think the beauty of this is, as I'm sure you're about to touch on, this isn't just you and I chatting about it from a conceptual perspective. We're going to try and give people really concrete tips, but also we're going to hear from some guests.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, a big part of this is going to be about discovering some of the stuff that you're talking about there as we go along. But I wonder, as a kick-off here, what are your first thoughts around how we view success and how we judge success?
I think we're in a really interesting place at the moment in relation to that. And I'll give you a classic example of that. If you went onto Instagram at any moment in any 24 hours, you would see that half of the people in the world apparently own a Ferrari. Most of them are standing in front of a pool that's clearly attached to a massive mansion that they own. And, it would be difficult, I think, to being brought up in this moment in time, because you're not quite sure where your reference points are. And we all know that 90% of those people standing in front of that Ferrari just happen to have found one in a car park, or they've got they've jumped over the wall and they're standing in front of a pool in Beverly Hills or something. It's not their house. I'm not mean that as a disservice for lots of people who've got those things, and it is not a judgment about that. It's just the representation of success. I think it's really difficult at this particular moment in history for people to get a sense of, and it's easier to judge yourself by other people's version of success, real or not, than perhaps to create a sense of that for yourself. And I think the really exciting part of this is I've got no idea where we'll go with this podcast, and you said discovery. That's really for me what we're trying to do here, is discover some insights that will be useful for listeners, both that you and I will generate, but also that other people that we'll have on the show will. And I think that's the first part I would say, is it's difficult to define success at this point in time if you're using external references. So the challenge then becomes, okay, if I'm not going to use external references, how might I define success?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And does it literally break down in that way then, in terms of people begin to view their success from an external reference point or from an internal reference point? Is that one dimension, if you like, of how success is viewed?
Yes, and I think it's a cheap shot to suggest that external references points for success are not the right way to go. Who are we to say? If you are brought up in an incredibly poor environment, and your way of judging your success is the fact that you got out of that, or you're the first person in your family ever to go to university, or you're the first, whatever. I don't think we've got a right to say that's not okay for you to use those external measures of success. I think probably those external things also provide you with an internal barometer too. So actually, my first £1 million or business deal, or my first degree, or whatever it happens to be, also fulfills an internal sense of success too. So there's a kind of link between those two things.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, you're talking almost the third person there, but I wonder whether the catalyst for this is anything to do with your personal journey that you're on with this in terms of getting to grips with how you view success for yourself?
Yeah, I didn't realise it was going to turn into one of those sessions. But yeah, look, I am somebody that's keen to get as close to my potential as I can. I don't know what that potential is. I've got a sense that I'm nowhere near it, and I work with enough people to know that we've all got more of that capacity to explore than we give ourselves credit for sometimes. And so, yeah, I think the Success ID will absolutely enable both of us, I would guess, to push the boundaries, learn things about ourselves that we didn't know, compare ourselves, but not in a comparing way, but to other people's version of success. You know, how are other people defining that for themselves? And then just check in. You know, what might that mean for me? How might I view my life differently based on some of the conversations that we have as we run this podcast?
Yeah. So therefore, who's it for? Who's this series of podcasts for then?
Can I say everyone?
Yeah, you can. Might want to elaborate a bit.
I think if you've even vaguely interested in what you are possible of doing, you know, what the possibilities are for you as a human being, or you're a little feeling a little bit of grit in the shoe at this point in time in your life, it's possible that you're in a transition between one area of development or stage of development and the next. Or it may be that you just feel that you have more that you could do, or more that you could offer or contribute. And it's for all of those people that have a sense of, well, let's just explore what else I could be doing at this point with my life. You know, or I really know that I'm not fulfilling all that potential, and help me through this podcast define what that might look like and how I might start that process.
And you touched on earlier on about the idea of having guests coming in and tell their story. So how's it going to work? How is this series of podcasts going to work?
Well, I think we're aiming to distribute them on a weekly basis is the aspiration, and I think that kind of feels, unless the audience will tell us they want it more or less regularly than that, that feels like a natural kind of rhythm. Just a weekly check-in, and there'll be some that are you and I talking about a particular topic that's of interest to us, something perhaps that's come out of other podcasts with, you know, that begins to be a bit of a theme that you and I can chew over, but also, you know, the vast majority of these podcasts, you know, we're hoping to have, and we've already got scheduled in some just really interesting guests, you know, who have a view of by the way, almost typically those people that we have on won't deem themselves a success is my guess. I think they would probably say, why have you got me on, I'm not a success. So I think that might be an interesting trait, but that you and I have looked at and think they're interesting, you know, they're interesting people. They seem to be comfortable in their own skin, they've achieved a lot, or they've got a story to tell that might be inspirational and might help the audience think about their own versions of success and how they might get there. So it's hopefully a really engaging set of guests over the period. And you know, the shout out to the audience is, if you've got people who you genuinely admire, you know, and you genuinely think other people would be interested in listening to, get in touch. You know, we're always interested in learning about people who've sort of seemed to have nailed some of this.
My understanding is the first in those series of stories will be your own story. So we look forward to hearing a little bit more from you about your personal journey to success, whether you view it that way or not.
Definitely not. So I'm definitely one of those people that falls into the category of not. But thank you for that.
So that's where we're going next. So for now, thanks Glenn, and thanks everybody for listening, and we look forward to seeing you for the next podcast next week.
Super. Thanks, David.